debate, please fill up this form. You must answer questions whether you want to speak about resolution 1 or 2 and so on. You will see all these requirements on the form. And if you would like to ask questions to panelists, please look at the down of the page and you'll find the question concerning that. And please write down your question, and this will be provided here to the stage. So now we can start with the debate. As you know, we will speak about new progressive societies, how to renew them. And participants of the panel are Petroula Nteledimou, do I speak well? Who is from Greece. She is the president of ECOSI, and the other panelist is Libor Roucek, member of European Parliament from the Czech Republic. And we have also Waidelich from Sweden. He is member of Swedish Parliament. Ms. Damanaki will be with us later. And there is also Espen Barth-Eide from Norway. Welcome. Oh, welcome. Sorry. Each of you have 5 minutes on the beginning to personal presentation and remarks. And I must say I must be very tough on that. So here we see the time, how it will be going. Please control yourself. If not, I will help you to be right with time. And should we start with the lady, please, if you don't mind?
Thank you very much. And good morning to everybody. I understand that being the first panel, we really have to give the good example, although it's not always so easy. But indeed, when we talk about progressive societies, about how to build progressive societies, even how to renew our societies in a progressive way, what I actually think is that what we need is not complicated notions or ideas or we don't have to discover the wheel or the fire again. We have done this before. We have built progressive societies. In here, I see many people who have been governing progressive societies in the past, and we managed quite well. Some are still doing it. But what we actually need for today, in order to respond to the challenges of today, is simple words, simple ideas, simple structures, and to be quite honest with ourselves and with the people, with what exactly we want, what exactly is our plan, to be very clear, and at the same time, if you want, even in times of crisis like we are right now, to be even proud of being socialists, to be proud of being progressives, and to speak it out clearly, because this is the only way that the people will support us in our plan, that the people will actually vote for us. We have a good plan, everybody can say that, but as it is stated in our paper as well, we fail to win elections in many, many cases, European elections being a big example of that. So what do we mean by progressive societies? How we, young European socialists in ECOSI, imagine a progressive society? We would put 3 pillars to base it. On the first would be the social rights itself, meaning education, employment, healthcare, and social security. So to have the welfare of the people, to have a decent, a good education of high quality, accessible for everybody, to have employment, and not just any kind of employment, but decent work for everybody, including the young people, not leaving them as the last in the row, in the right for a decent work, including women, including actually everybody in the society. to have a good quality healthcare and a social security, so to increase actually the feeling of security of everybody in the society. Second pillar, participation. It is not only important what we here imagine for the people as a nice and progressive and welfare society. It is very important that the people themselves, everybody also outside this room, in Poland today or in a couple of days when we really hope that they will choose for a progressive society, and all around Europe have their say, can define themselves actively in what they mean by a good society, call it progressive or socialist or whatever they would call it, but a good one in which they will have been satisfied to live in. And the third pillar, inclusion and solidarity, meaning we can never ever call our movement progressive or socialist, we can never call a society good or progressive or in any other positive name if it is not a society for all, for everybody. And how can we imagine progress without the young people? How can we imagine progress without women? How can we imagine progress without immigrants, without disabled people, without people who come from less favored backgrounds, when exactly these ones have proved throughout history to be the main actors of change and of progress? Everybody not just deserves, but has to be a very active and equal member of this society, and solidarity sticking next to each other, especially in times of crisis. One more point, because I see only 20 seconds left. Societies in Europe anymore. I would say, exactly because it is shaking the European building and there is a lot of questioning about it, that we want one progressive European society where everybody feels member, active and equal member of it. And that's time zero. Thank you.
And what we need is this kind of feeling of time, really. Well, Libor, what's your statement? Mr. Roucek, what's your statement?
Colleagues, comrades, our movement, it's an old movement. We are here for the last 130, 140 years. If we look back to our roots, we have achieved great progress. We have emancipated rural people who came to the towns, who came to work in the industries in the 19th century. We educated them. We also provided them with the possibilities to get employment, to get education, to get decent housing, health care, pensions, and so on. Our movement in the 19th and early 20th century was a movement of working class, working people, people who used to work in the same industries, who used to have same lifestyles, who used to earn even the same money. We were successful. But the society changed. We live in the globalized world with global competition. We live in a post-industrial society. I think not only in West European countries, but increasingly also in the so-called new member states, including Poland. The time when everybody worked in coal mines, steel works, chemical industry, where everybody used to do the same type of work, I think it's over. And our movement, we have to adapt to those changes. We have to adapt to post-industrial society, whether we like it or not. The society, the people are becoming more individualistic. Yes, the majority of the population still work as employees. They are workers, they are truck drivers, they are people working in agriculture, There are people working on computers. There are people working in healthcare, in education. Most of the society are employees. But there is no common feeling, no common identity as it used to be in the old societies, in the old industries. And we have to adapt to that. I think we have to be and become more liberal. We have to marry the values of freedom. Our basic value is freedom, with equality, with solidarity. And we have to adapt those old values, proven values, the history, to the new conditions. I think we are capable of it. Who else could do it? Who else has this great historical experience? Yes, it is true, and the last 10 years proved that in elections we are not successful. 10 years ago, out of 15 EU governments, 12 were run by the Social Democrats. These days, it's only 5 or 6. Yes, I think we have to take this into account, that when we are designing our European policies, for instance, in the European Parliament, so that we can achieve maximum. We can achieve maximum of what we would like to achieve, because we don't have the political power, we don't have the numbers. So we have to take this into account. Yes, we are forced to make compromises. Yes, sometimes we are attacked both from the right, and we are also attacked from new movements on the left, from left parties, also from green parties. So our situation is not easy, but I'm sure we can overcome that. I'm sure we again will be successful, but we have to, as I mentioned, marry our old traditional values with the progressive changes. We have to marry the views of older generation that used to work in those older industries, with the young generations, people who are more individualistic, who are influenced by modern means of communication. So I think this we have to take into account. This we have to take into account when we talk about renewal of our program, and I'm sure we will be successful, because we were successful in the past, and I don't see any reasons why we wouldn't be successful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me introduce Maria Damanaki, who is European Commissioner for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, and she was engaged in underground student opposition in Greece years ago. Excuse me? A lot. Okay. We'll let you rest a bit after you sit down, and let's turn to Espen Barth-Eide, who is State Secretary and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. I agree with Petronella that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we have to renew our message. And I think that my main message today is that what we should try to tell people is that a modern, progressive model is best for the economy. It's not only the right thing to do because it's politically good, it's solidaric and morally correct. It's the best model for a modern economy. And we have solid evidence that flexicurity actually works. It is possible to combine a strong social responsibility for the individual with innovation and change. It has been proven it is possible. It's actually, there's an increasing interest in economic research about the fact that, quite contrary to traditional thought, equality is good for innovation, that equal societies are good for innovation, and many of the richest countries in the world also have a low wage gap and also a low gender gap, meaning a good distribution of work between men and women, between young and elderly, and so on. And what should be our main message is that we put work at the center, we put jobs first, just work, decent work, fair work, but jobs at the center. Old people, young people, women and men, immigrants, we should have a society in which there is room for them at the workplace. The more people that work, the broader is the tax base, and with the broad tax base, we can have good income for the state without having a too high tax level. So a moderate tax level combined with a broad tax base is possible and it's doable. I want to focus particularly on the economic effects of gender equality. We're all in favor of increased gender equality for a variety of reasons, but let's use the economic argument, which is a very strong argument. Having childcare, having care for the elderly, having laws and regulations which promotes the participation of women throughout their life in the working career releases talent, it puts more people working, it moves people from the informal economy of looking after kids and the elderly in the informal sector into the formal sector, it frees up people to do other work, and it means that we broaden the number of people actually working. I would also argue, and this is a contested issue, I would also argue that as progressives, we should not be afraid of raising the pension age, as long as it's a part of a broad package. Because with an increasingly long-lived population, having a very low pension age actually means that we are pushing people who could be working into the non-working part of the economy, which is not good in the long run. It may seem strange in days of high unemployment, but the long-term challenge for progressive societies is to make sure that people are able to work. Young people, elderly, women, and so on. This requires a universal welfare model, which is not so much focused to keep people in the particular workplace they have, but to support the individual in the transition from one place of work to another, to take care of the transition, to train and retrain, and keep a high social standard even in times of change. Again, this requires a social dialogue. It requires a social dialogue between employers, employees, and the government, which means that you trade influence for responsibility. Broad wage settlement issues and processes, which means that we have a fair distribution of wages and not simply allocating the highest jobs, the highest wages to the people who are best at negotiating at the negotiating table. It also requires us to renew the fundamental social democratic principle that there is a relationship between rights and obligations. You have rights as a member of society, and you have a number of, there are a number of allowances and entitlements that you have as a member of society, but you also have obligation to do your best. That package has to be renewed. It's very important that we do not allow a society where more and more people are outside of that bargain. This of course brings us to the issue of diversity. With more and more diverse societies, we have to be very good as governments, as parties, to make sure that everyone in society, also the immigrants, become part of the broad bargain of rights and obligations, so that the fundamental social contract can be upheld in the long run. This is not reinventing the wheel, because this is actually a message that we've had for a long time. But we have clearly not been good enough at explaining the part which is, this is actually good for the economy. This provides for modern, competitive growth, and this provides for a broad inclusion into a modern and transitional economy in an increasingly changing world economic landscape. And only if we do get that message right, we will be able to get back into power in much more countries, and I think that should be part of our message, not only the fairness, but it's good for the economy. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much. Waidelich, Swedish MP, please, your point of view.
Thank you very much. I also want to agree with Petroula when she said that we have done this before, because we renewed, and we did it when we transformed the new industrial societies into welfare states. And now we are on the way to transform the industrial societies into knowledge-based societies. And I think that this resolution, number one, that we have to discuss during these days, is a very important contribution to that. especially the European macroeconomic model for fair growth. It shows that Europe can make difference. It shows that with European economic coordination, with the European common investments in infrastructure like energy, transports, investment in green jobs, research programs, we can take Europe from the old society into the new, to take us from the old jobs to create the new jobs. And a very important part of that is also that we have a social sustainable model. And therefore we are later on going to discuss the program European Employment and Social Progress Pact, which I think is a very important contribution to that discussion. And I think it's very important to say that even if we can make measures, social measures on the European levels, the main work has to be done on the national and regional level. It has to be a combination between European measures and national and regional measures. And what I want to see is that we build social bridges from the old society into the new, from the old jobs into the new jobs. And these bridges have different names. One of them is active market, labor market policy. Another name is education. A third name is welfare state that includes all the citizens. A fourth name is generous unemployment subsidies. And what I want to point out is that all these bridges help people to go from the old to the new, to feel secure, to meet the future, to be open-minded into changes to globalization. Because if you know that the day when you will be unemployed, you will have the possibility to be reskilled, to have education, to be prepared for the new jobs. And meanwhile you do that, you know that you will have a decent economic situation via these unemployment subsidies. That makes that you can keep your house, you can also, with a generous welfare system, still use important welfare functions as childcare and school for your children. You have the right to health care if you're sick. If you have all these bridges together, you will feel secure to meet the new, and you will also be prepared to meet the new. So I think this is a very important combination with the European measures and also with the national and regional measures. Investments, stimulation on the European level, combined with creating social bridges from the old to the new on the European, national, and regional level. Finally, I only want to be critical on one point, and this is the discussion about a European minimum wage level. I see that the purpose is good, but the problem is I think that this could lead to a pressure downwards on the wages, because the situation is quite different between our countries. You know that, we know that. And if you put a European minimum level, even if you do that by collective bargaining, the risk is obvious that we have a pressure downwards on the wages. And I think that this is the wrong way to go. Our way, the social democratic way, is not the race to the bottom. It's to compete with knowledge, compete with well-skilled workers. And this is the way that we shall choose. And that's why I also want to address the fear for this European minimum level. But to summarize, very important contribution, these two parts of the program, stimulation, investments on European level, combined with building social bridges on the European, local, and national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really admire the discipline on the left. I mean, it usually used to belong to conservatives to be so much disciplined, not to the anarchistic left. Well, Maria Damanaki, please, floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to start saying you my yesterday's experience. So yesterday, during a college meeting, we discussed and we decided about the new stabilization program of Ireland, the new economic program for Ireland. It was a very difficult discussion, very engaged one, and at the end of this discussion, President Barroso himself and Olli Rehn, I can say afterwards, for first time, they used a new term. They spoke about a European systemic crisis. Till now, we are very comfortable. We used to say a lot of things about our economies, but now I think everybody, not only us, everybody, we have realized that what is threatening is not just our economies. What I think is threatening now is the future of the European integration. We live historic moments. So, I'm sorry I have missed the previous speeches, but what I have to say in a very clear way is that, yes, we have to reinvent the wheel for a very simple reason, because the wheel we have till now was for another season, very different times. We have to realize that the situation is totally different, and we cannot handle this situation with our old instruments. It's not working. This is as simple as that. So what we have to do, of course, in 5 minutes we cannot say what we have to do, but what I can say in a very clear way is that we need concrete answers. We cannot go to citizens and say to them some beautiful words about employment, about growth, and so on. We socialists are very easy, are very comfortable to speak about spending, but this is not enough for this time. So I think that we have to give answers to some very difficult problems, because of course we can, of course we have done it in the past, but I have to remind you that it took us 40 or 50 years to build a welfare system, and it took only 5 or 10 years to destroy, for the liberals and the conservatives to destroy this system totally. So it's not so easy. What our answers have to be? What I mean when I'm talking about concrete answers, I mean that we have to introduce our social approach to consolidation decisions. This is what is needed now. We cannot speak only about spending. What we need is to have some social ideas in these stabilization processes. Otherwise, we are going to lose the game. So what we can do? What we can do, I think, is that we have to say in a very clear way that this strategic of consolidation does not fit for all the countries. To be very open and brave, consolidation is needed for Greece, for example, the country I know best. Because there we have large deficits and we have irresponsible behavior of the previous governance. But do we really need consolidation for Germany? Of course, we need consolidation in Ireland, but there in another way, because there it was not the same problem. There was the decision of the liberals to give money to the banks. So it's not one fits for all situation here, and we have to go with concrete proposals, not with general ideas. It's not enough. We have also said in a very clear way that consolidation has to be more balanced, because these are the problems we face now. And in what way we can do it to be more balanced? Then we have to say something about growth. We have to say something about new resources of financing. We need here concrete proposals about the merits of bank levies, of financial transaction taxes, about Eurobonds. This is what we have to discuss here and have a clear answer, a clear decision, because this is what our citizens discuss, and not just praise for better employment and better economic situation. I finished. Okay. next round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you want to add a sentence, if you want to add a sentence just for finishing, please.
Just a sentence. Thank you for your understanding. What I would like also to ask is that finance is not the only sector where we have to be brave. I think also that we have to be brave saying something about an open Europe, and a Europe of a new enlargement towards Russia and Turkey. This is my idea, because without the resources of these countries, we cannot solve our problems. And we also have to say something against Europe of limited responsibility, as some countries see it, and we can see that nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of first round. And then we have a chance to see a video with questions raised in the PES Renew discussion platform. Please, go ahead.
More and more women are elected to the top jobs in the world. Why are there so few in Europe, especially from the left-wing parties? A social democratic society is a society of citizens, not of sects, languages or cultures. Shouldn't one of the core messages of social democracy be that we are all part of an equal society?
A personal investment with a political candidate is one essential condition in establishing a successful political connection. The PES Congress in 2009 decided to have a common PES candidate for the European Commission presidency. How can we ensure a democratic and transparent process?
Well, thank you very much. Let me remind you about the possibility of asking questions to panelists. To do it, you need to fill up the form and provide it to the secretary, the table there, and they will provide it here. Now is a good time for our speakers. The first speaker will be Mario Rodriguez, Special Advisor to the PES. Please.
Good morning, everybody. I think we really enjoyed to see this panel so outspoken about giving us a vision what can be a progressive society in the future. This is for sure that a progressive society should combine innovation, more green growth, and inclusive societies. But now I think everybody is asking, is it possible for us to implement such an agenda? Because we are seeing in Europe, across Europe, a big pressure for austerity, and we can ask if our governments and our parties in the parliament, they can have a real alternative regarding this shift to austerity we are living through. Maria Damanaki has a special responsibility in the European Commission, and she gave us a very important alert. She is right when she is telling that we are in a special situation where financial markets were in the origin of this financial crisis, and now they are creating a kind of systemic crisis in the Eurozone, which is threatening not only the Eurozone countries, but Europe as a whole. So we do have a new situation, because these divergences between spreads will be turned into divergences of deficits and then growth and jobs. And we cannot have this kind of trend in Europe because this will really hit Europe in its heart. So we can ask, how can we make a difference? Are our governments, are our parties condemned to this austerity path? I don't think so. I think that the first point to be ensured is that your governments, your parties, they present not only a budget, which needs to be a responsible budget, but also a plan for growth and jobs. This is possible. We have already some member states moving with these two legs, not only austerity budgets, but plans for growth and jobs. And we need to ensure conditions to implement these plans. So this means to have fiscal space in our budgets to invest. This means to have new revenues, such as a financial transaction tax, green taxation. This means to have Eurobonds to invest in long-term needs for Europe. But most of all, we need to have the right decisions in Europe. We need to work together for that. We are having the most important ever reform of the Stability and Growth Pact. We need to ensure that this reform keeps the room for investment, and we need to make sure that the mechanism which was created in May to respond to the so-called Greek crisis will be revamped to become a mechanism to protect the whole Eurozone and Europe. Because we need to be clear, what is at stake now is not only a threat on some more weak economies, this is really a threat on Europe.
Maria.
And we are probably close to the need of a new compromise where we should have, first, certainly fiscal responsibility, but also solidarity, and third and finally, more cooperation for growth and jobs. So let's work together for this new compromise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now there's next 3 minutes for process. There are some members of European Parliament from Ireland. Please, if you are here, take the floor. Oh. And the next will be Juan Fernando Lopez Aguilar. Please be ready.
Good morning. Principessa Rossa. I'm from Ireland, member of the S&D group in the European Parliament, leader of the Irish Labour Party delegation there. I've just come back from the Palestinian territories. I thought I'd go there and try and solve an easy problem other than the problems of Ireland and the current economic crisis. I think, first of all, yesterday the government published the deal it has just signed off on with the European Central Bank, the IMF and the European Commission. And it's quite simply a deplorable deal. It will condemn Ireland to no growth, growing debt, and probably within perhaps a year, 2 years at most, insolvency. It is not a solution. Everybody knows it's not a solution. The markets certainly know it's not a solution. And yes, there is no debate about a European solution to, as you say, a systemic crisis. And it's, I think, perhaps one of the things we should be debating here, and perhaps during the course of the next day or two we may do, is how can Europe respond to this crisis as Europe? At the moment, it would appear to me, certainly, that each member state is attempting to deal with these issues as states, as national states, perhaps seeking assistance from Europe, the Central Bank and elsewhere, as the crisis becomes unmanageable. The biggest single mistake made by the current government in Ireland was a blanket guarantee for all of the bank's debts. All of the bank debts in Ireland have now become, this private debt has now become public debt. 780 billion euros, most of it owed to other European banks. Leaving aside the appalling situation where banks in Germany and elsewhere loan such massive amounts to Irish banks, banks that you could fit in your back pocket. One wonders what exactly they thought they were doing. One wonders what they thought they were trying to achieve in loaning such massive amounts to banks in Ireland to feed a property bubble. But I think one of the demands has to be is a common European bond for sovereign debt in Europe. I don't think we're going to be able to resolve this crisis unless we address that significant issue. The social impact of what has been agreed with the IMF and the EU, and here I have to say that the IMF, in fact, were far more holistic in terms of what they expected Ireland to do than the European Union. The Commission was by far the most bloodthirsty in terms of seeking cuts. I'm going to finish here now. But I do think that the final point I want to make is that in the Parliament just a week or two ago, can't remember exactly when now, it's so long, but I put it specifically to the Commission, in what way was the 2020 strategy being used in the current negotiations in Ireland? I got no reply. It is not being used as a framework in any sense. So we can tear that up. It doesn't mean anything. The 2020 strategy at this point in time means nothing. And we have to begin to stand up and shout very loudly at the Commission that they have to now accept their responsibilities under the Lisbon Treaty. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Juan Fernando Lopez Aguilar, please take the floor.
Good day, everybody. Thank you for the floor. It's good to be here despite the weather. It's good to be sharing this forum for debate. And I think just naturally, the papers we're dealing with in this conference show an emphasis on the financial and economic dimensions of the crisis we've been facing for the last couple of years. Just natural that the papers deal with economic issues and show economic responses, even with an economic kind of a language. But I would like to bring your attention to the social and political dimension of the crisis, because this is not an economic think tank. This is a political forum. We are political parties here. We are representing people, human beings, flesh and bones, which are looking at us and expecting a political answer. And I think the political landscape that has been brought about by this financial and economic crisis shows characteristics which are extremely anti-progressive, which show a challenge to progressive politics as we have never seen before, maybe in a lifetime. First, it's about change. The world is about change, and change brings about anxiety. Second, it's about complexity. The world is becoming more and more complex, multidimensional, multipolar, and complexity brings about reaction against complexity, because people are looking, as it has been said so many times, simple answers to complex issues, which are simply bound to fail. Because yes, of course, complex issues admit simple answers, but sorry, answers which happen most likely to be wrong and are most likely unuseful. And third, it's about insecurity. And insecurity brings about a trend towards individualistic and egoistic approach, which are reacting against social values, against social frames, against social bets for social change. So yes, I think this economic and financial crisis brings about a huge challenge against progressive politics. So I say that this conference should help the members, the ingredients of this socialist family, progressive family. We in the Party of the European Socialists should face the challenge of recovering politics, recovering political ground, which means a lot of things at the same time. First of all, identifying the new foe which is haunting Europe, this ghost that has been said more than once, to be haunting Europe, and it's not the ghost of communism anymore. It's the ghost of populism, which is the new face of extreme right. Extreme right, which is jingoistic, which is demagoguery, which is xenophobia, which is hatred, hatred speech, which is the exploitation of fear, which is so widespread across Europe because of this crisis. We should face the new extreme right, the new populism as a foe, and try to stand up with politics regaining political sphere and trying to modernize politics in order to get citizens back to the deck. I think our voters, and even more than that, European citizens are getting aloof and aloof and aloof and aloof from politics. They're getting away from politics. So the polls show a declining tendency to vote. The turnouts, the participation rates are declining too. And that is a massive challenge for us in progressive politics. So I think that we should try to conclude in this conference with an explicit bet, with some kind of a real, not only a statement, but a commitment to regain politics and to regain the allure, the attraction of the political sphere to the European citizens, beyond, of course, all of the economic and financial considerations which are that important and that frequent in our debates from a certain point to now. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Well, this time to answer questions, if there are any, please provide them here. No. If not, I think that the crucial problem has been delivered by Ms. Commissioner Damanaki, who said that there's fundamental structural crisis of European integration. It seems like a quite new term in our debate, and perhaps this is a pretty good time to start to work on that. Do you think so? So perhaps we have like 16 minutes left. So perhaps I could ask you now to try to describe your way of thinking about this kind of definition of the situation. And then each of you will have like 2 minutes just for the final statement, okay? If you don't mind, perhaps we could start with Tommy Waidelich from Sweden. Tom, please.
Yes, I believe that we have a structural crisis in different senses. First of all, we have an economic crisis, and caused by the financial crisis and the fall of Lehman Brothers 2008, coming back in different shapes. And the solution 2008 was this European mechanism. In one way, we could say that we saved the banks, but we put the problems into the state. And one result of that is now was Greece. In Ireland it's different, because in Ireland now it's driven by the problems in the bank sector once again. And we don't know if this will happen in other parts of Europe. I think that this has gained the governments, because people get very afraid 2008. People with loans, when the interest rates doubled or tripled, and people get afraid, and they saw that something was happening to their own economy, to their neighbors. They were afraid of unemployment. And because of this European mechanism that saved the banks, the financial sector, at least temporarily, I think this gained all the governments, including the governments at that time, and now were right-wing governments. So we'll live with that situation. We have to handle that. But I think the other structural issue is that we have to go from the, as I told, from the old to the new economy. And the problem for us is that we are not there yet. We are going, we are trying, we are intending, and this Congress or this Council today is a good try. But for instance, my own country, We lost the election. We had 30% of the voters. This is a very low figure for Sweden. But among working people, people with jobs, we had 20% support. And in the new dynamic regions, where you have the new economy, we have 10% support. Something is happening out there, and we have to be there in the front. We have to be in the new economy, and this will be our homework. And I think this is also the structural issue to discuss.
Sure, please.
Yeah, first I would say I very much agree with my Swedish colleague that it is about helping the transition, the social bridges, moving from one economy to another with the social face, the social responsibility, which is what it's all about. Of course, Maria is perfectly right that we must not end up as the party of the spenders who just believe we can spend us out of the crisis. That's absolutely true. And you ask for concrete proposals. Well, cut subsidies to unproductive sectors, raise pension age, and change the money over to the social bridge approach. But there are other cuts which I think are actually extremely detrimental to the economy in the long run. If you cut in education, you cut in the investment in the future. The new economies from China, India to Brazil are investing heavily in education, so they will have a more educated population in 20 years than we have, and that's a big problem for us. If you cut in the gender balance approaches, you will also, I mean, my whole argument on gender is that it's good for the economy, it's a net benefit. If the costs of having childcare, care of the elderly, laws that regulate, have more women in the workplace is a net benefit to the economy. It's not spending, it's a net benefit. So we need to have this sort of, the focus also in austerity times is to cut on the right side and enforce the role of the state in other areas. We have a systemic crisis, yes. We have a European systemic crisis and a global systemic crisis, as we had in the 1930s. The big difference and the main and possibly only difference between the 1930s and these times is that we do have institutions that we didn't have then. We have the EU and we have the International Monetary Fund and so on. We have institutions that we can use if we want to avoid exporting the problem from one country to the other, as was the answer in the 30s, and try to meet them collectively. But the institutions don't create politics. We have to fill the institutions with sound politics. And that's what we're here to do now, to have one, and I think again, Petronella said it, not several progressive societies, but a vision of a progressive European society that we collectively build through the institutions that we have. And that's about smart cuts and smart spending, rather than more or less cuts and spending.
Petroula.
Thank you. Well, as if even Mr. Barroso admits that we have one European systemic crisis, then definitely we need one European society, progressive society, to overcome it. But in terms of more concrete solutions and more concrete ways how to get out of this crisis, and well, keeping in mind that I have to be very careful, these are actually my last words to you, to a PS Council as ECOSY President. That's my last PS Council as ECOSY President anyway. I would say that what makes the difference between us and the conservatives, us and the liberals or the neoliberals, is actually something that was mentioned a couple of times but not pointed out enough maybe. Instead of mere cuts, we are talking about growth and more reasonable, more logical spending, and different kind of spending maybe, but still investment on societies and on the pillars, what we consider to be the pillars of the society. That's the first set of solutions which we have to consider very carefully, since we are talking about finances and the discussion is about money all the time. Second, if we are talking about justice and fairness as it is in our paper, I would like to remind here a very old, traditional, maybe even sounding a bit old-fashioned, but always up-to-date socialist idea and ideal of redistribution. And it is, if we want to renew and reinvent redistribution for our times, I would say not just redistribution of wealth, not just the money. What we actually need is also redistribution of democracy in our societies and in general in Europe right now. Redistribution of the roles, making every citizen not only having the right to speak, but also responsible for their words, for their decisions, for their votes, actually, something to always remember. And third, the discussion, which is already a long discussion, also a big debate inside our own family, and I think it will come up several times during these 2 days, to increase Europe's own resources. If European Union is in a systemic crisis, if it has to get out of this, then we do not only have to reform the way we distribute the European money, the European Union money, but also to increase the European Union own resources. If we want to stay in this building, we have to take care of it, and we have to help it survive all the time. I know it's a hard discussion in times of crisis, but it has to take place, and we do not have to be the ones stopping or being reluctant towards this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Libor?
Petroula just mentioned a notion of redistribution. I do agree with that. But first, if we want to redistribute something, we have to create something. We have to create wealth. And our problem, even in Sweden, where our Swedish colleagues were governing for, I don't know, last 65 years out of 75, the people don't trust us that we are capable to manage the economy. And I think this is one of our problems. Austerity. Nobody can live beyond his or her means, not even a state. So we have to be fiscally responsible. But in contrast to the conservatives and liberals, we have to invest into growth. If we look at the post-war situation in Europe, all the countries, all the states had huge debts. But by 1950s or 60s, there was huge economic growth, the infrastructure was created, and the overall level of indebtedness went down. So I think we also have to look a little bit into the history, and we socialists, we social democrats, we should combine, yes, fiscal responsibility, because if we are not fiscal responsible, our conservative voters will, I'm afraid, never vote for us. Notion or word of complexity. Yes, that's another problem. The politics, the economic affairs, the social, the personal situation of the people is too complex. Sometimes the people don't understand what's going on, what are the solutions, what the politicians can make. Hence, the rise of right-wing populistic parties, but also we have problems with left-wing populism. Communists on the left, they can promise whatever they want because they know they will never govern, they will never have to deliver. But we have to be responsible. My last word, no country, not a single country, even the biggest country in Europe, can deal with the problems on its own. So we have to look for European solutions within the EU. Yes, it's not easy sometimes because on one hand we have very developed countries, on the other hand sometimes we have poor countries in our new member states, but we have to look for common European solutions. And if we want to be successful, we also have to help to create global framework, because the crisis is global, and it's not enough if we just deal with the issues, economic, ecologic, and so on in Europe, control of the banks, of the financial markets, if we don't create, stricter regulations for the global markets. Because the crisis, yes, in Greece, all the governments in the past were spending over their means. But in Ireland, the state behaved fiscally very responsible, but there was no control of the banks. So we need to put banks there where they always were, to provide proper services for investment, for growth, but not for the speculation. Again, if we want to be successful, we have to have European solutions and global solutions. That should be, I think, big chunk of our progressive agenda.
Ms. Commissioner, would you like to add something?
Just a few words. I would like to underline again that it's not about Greece or Ireland anymore. It was about Greece or Ireland, but now it's also about a lot of countries. I don't want to mention names because there is speculation and we have to be cautious, but nevertheless it's not about Greece and Ireland anymore. It's a systemic crisis, and I think that we have to understand that what we face is the possibility of a total backlash of our ideas, of our values, not only in economic field. I totally agree with the Spanish colleague who raised up this issue, that we have to reinvent politics in a way. We have to bring politics to life and to persuade people that they can trust politics again. I would like to end saying something about the European game. It is true, and I can agree that we have European institutions now, but, well, I think that now the Irish colleague told us that in Ireland, for example, the IMF is more popular than EU. So this is a problem, and the problem is that EU has the institutions, but it also has the game of every country, every man's game or every woman's game, referring to Germany. So this is something we have to understand. And we need a real leadership in order to reinvent a Europe of solidarity. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We still have like 3 minutes more. So if anybody has any short remark, please go ahead. If not, thank you very much. And in a few minutes we have the panel number 2. Thank you.